This is the planning committee of the 14th of October, and this is being live streamed. So thank you very much. We will commence with the agenda, and before we start, I'll welcome Miles Joyce, who is our interim development manager on my left. So just commencing with item 1, could I have approval for the minutes from the meeting of the 9th of September?
So moved.
Thank you very much. I shall sign those. Ross, thank you very much. Could I have apologies for absence and substitutes, please?
We have apologies from Councillor Curtis, Ganley, Johnson and Meir, and Councillor John Barnes is substituting today for Councillor Ganley.
Thank you very much. We don't have any additional items to the agenda. We have a withdrawn item, which is RR 2021/701/L, and we have one item which will be deferred, and that is item 10 RR 2021/492/P, and that's Gorsecliff. That will be deferred till December at the request of the applicant. Do we have any disclosures of interest? No disclosures. Well, if one occurs, please mention it before the application is heard. You can see the application index there at item 6, and that's going to move us straight on to the first item, which is actually item 8. And this is a councillor application, RR 2021/722/P, 31 Ninfield Road. Thank you. Miles.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is an application for a second floor mansard roof extension to form a 3-bedroom apartment and internal alterations to existing first floor flat to form a 1st-bedroom apartment and studio apartment at 31 Ninfield Road, Bexhill. The site lies within the development boundary for Bexhill, as defined in the development site allocations, local plan, and within the Sydney District Centre. So within the development boundary it is acceptable in principle. If we look at some of the plans, you can see here the existing plans and the change from 1 to 3 units. And if you look again at the next slide, you can see the layouts there and the mansard roof at the development, which is in line with existing development in the parade. There is a condition that will be put on, which will require materials details to be submitted prior to above ground works. And all I could say is that the living conditions are suitable. They're suitable gross internal floor area, the impact on amenities of adjoining occupiers, no adverse amenities are anticipated, and it is recommended, given the principle is accepted, to grant permission subject.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coleman, did you want to make a comment on this application?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. I have a cold, but I have tested myself 3 times for COVID, so you're all safe. Yeah, this is great. It's happening. As I said, it would happen several applications ago when this committee first approved a development very much like this on number 21. And at the time, the recommendation was against, as you all know, the reason being that it would be out of character with the area. I said, well, actually, if you do this, all the others will follow. And here we are, quite a few applications down the line, and all the others are following. That's now numbers 21, 37, 38 to 40, 44, 46 to 52, all with this style of added floor, which not only makes the businesses more viable, but also adds to our housing needs, or subtracts from our housing needs, rather. The only thing I would say to the committee is to make note of the council's housing team, where they've said about the fire safety condition, and to think about adding that, because obviously we want all of our accommodation to be livable. But I think this is an amazing application for the area of Sidley, and it will keep Sidley High Street thriving. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Did anyone want to make any comments on this application? Councillor Prochak. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Just a couple of things. One is about that condition, because that was the only issue that was raised about escape in case of fire. and whether we need to actually write in that as a specific condition. The other question is Councillor Coleman is absolutely right that one, we give permission for one and others will follow. But does that preclude the others following in any way at all?
Well, the answer to the first question is that the housing standards is a matter for building control, and it could be something we could add as an informative. The second one is that each application is on its merits, but clearly if there's a precedent in the area, and it would, you would look at it more favourably. If you look at the parade there, you know, what your ideally to get now is a completion there of this development, so it's more likely that given what's happened.
Councillor Drayson.
It's not on this application, Chair. I can hear a little echo of, and I don't know what that's going to do to people watching outside. The sound I can hear from something in here as well.
It is quite.
I can put up with it, but I don't know what it does on YouTube.
Just to make members aware, I have checked with Claire. The broadcast is fine, so it's more annoying to us than it is to anybody else who might be watching.
Thank you.
I'll speak up. All right, more. Councillor Errington.
Hi, thanks. Councillor Pochak took my question about the fire regs because the agent appears to want themselves a condition, so can that definitely be put in? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it would be more an issue for an informative.
Okay.
So do we have another question on it?
And the other question was on terms of materials. Can we make them look the same? Because on the opposite side of the street, where we've seen these mansard, is it? It's all in one line and it looks really nice. And you don't really want, I don't know, different colours. Would we be able to insist on, say, the grey slate or whatever's already there to follow the line across?
Well, there is a condition requiring the details of materials to be submitted for approval.
Just to touch your button.
There is I beg your pardon. Yes, there is a condition on there requiring the details of the submission of materials
Right.
to be submitted for approval.
But I think we want to be more specific in that we want to make sure that whole mansard looks the same.
Well, we can obviously look at other conditions acceptable. Absolutely, that's what we can do.
Will that guarantee us in future that they will all be the same? Because that's quite an important part of that original approval.
Well, I could say with the absence of opinion in the conservation area, I wouldn't guarantee that. So we can be mindful of what's gone before.
So we just have to make sure on application by application, we can put a condition on
Well,
this
the
application.
condition does give you a significant amount of control
Okay.
over the materials to be submitted.
Can we, on this application, can we put in a condition that it is the same material and finish as the existing one that you can see halfway down the terrace?
I don't think.
The microphone might want to move the microphone over to this side. It might be more beneficial, and that way you can talk into it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Barnes.
This is literally on water consumption, and I see this is a new requirement. It's 110 litres per person per day. Does that mean halfway through the washing cycle, the washing machine will start working? How do they measure it?
Well, I think that would be something which is a limiting condition, which you can provide the information for, should there be any suspicion that it has been breached.
Right.
I think it's done by taps that don't
Yes.
run full blast.
Presumably, this is a sign of things to come in other applications, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's a good thing, and so we're not wasting water.
Councillor Barnes, John Barnes. Yes, John.
Yes, I think it's quite important where you've got what is effectively one building, that we do have a condition that the materials and design is important as well as materials, conform to the overall concept of that building. So if we can find a way of wording that, design is quite important, it seems to me, in high streets. We should try to make the thing broadly fit. And I'm totally in favour of what's going on. I think it actually adds to the viability of the business. It actually makes the buildings more attractive. But we don't want people doing different things when it's basically the same building.
Yeah, so there is a limiting condition about work carried out in accordance with the approved plans. So that would cover most of it, but then further details and materials is a condition I referred to earlier, which does need to be submitted for approval. They're both standard conditions, I hasten to add.
Okay, so we should add a condition that the materials match the.
Well, I thought there already is one.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is one on materials. Its design, I think, is important because the mansard style would look very odd if you suddenly had a bit projecting in front of it.
Will it be in accordance with the approved plans?
Yeah.
Would be the limiting condition. The answer to that.
Yeah, I think we've got Councillor Langlands and Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you. Mine was just a comment that Councillor Barnes, I might be a little bit concerned about that in the sense that somebody might want to build a mansard roof that had better climate materials that suited the climate a bit better, like solar tiles or something like that. So I wouldn't want to be too limiting on what the materials were. I think your point about the design, I think, is right, but I think I wouldn't perhaps want to be too limiting on stating materials.
Well, there's a removal of permitted development rights as well. And I think what I would say there is that they can always put in an application for that and it'll be based on its merits. It doesn't mean that this is an absolute limitation. It means a limitation, which means you'll need planning permission for any alterations to that.
Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, the one that I'd like to see the paintwork of a certain colour, like it is in Rye. I mean, you don't want someone painting a garage door bright orange or bright yellow or something. I think if you had like neutral colours, like give them a few choices, but just, you know, keep it like black, white, grey, brown maybe. Thank you.
I think probably with colours, it is more difficult. That is a permitted development, and for things which are non-listed buildings, it's much more difficult to control. Yeah, but as I said, it's in terms of planning control.
Chairman, I'm happy to move subject to conditions.
All right, thank you. In second. Okay. So we have a mover and a seconder, subject to those conditions. Delegated. Can we have a vote, please, Julie? Yep. All right. Very good. Moving on. The next. Next application is RR 2021 1020P, and this is Spring Steps, and we visited this this site on Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a proposed attic conversion and installation of 3 number roof lights to a rear elevation. If you look at the plans, you can see it's it's in a row of 3 terrace houses. You can see on the front, it's got a side gabled roof, and to the rear elevation, if you look at the proposal, you have the 3 Velux roof lights to the rear of the property, and you can see that in the 3rd plan at the bottom right, and you also see some extra bedroom space created in the loft. It's got a minimal impact, even given the sensitivity of the area and the site, and really, there's not an awful lot more I can say, apart from that it's recommended to grant planning permission. It is on the roof lights, and they are considered to be acceptable, subject to standard conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Hilary, would you like to come forward to the seat? And you've got 5 minutes to say the things you would like to say, and there is an opportunity for members to ask you questions if they'd like to. So take it away when you're ready, really.
I'm Hilary Room, an architect with 12 years experience designing rural and public housing. I've lived at Spring Steps for 10 years. Spring Steps was built in 1948 by Battle RDC to provide decent family housing. There are 4 2-bedroom flats and 4 3-bedroom houses which are for 5 to 6 persons. 4 are now housing association and 4 privately owned. We share landscape, amenity and 4 parking places. We are a stable, harmonious enclave of full-time residents, except now number 6. The dwellings have good space standards, including storage. There are significant negative aspects about this loft conversion, which are contrary to planning policy. The creation of a passageway will result in the loss of a good-sized double twin room, leaving a single room, or tight double as is the practice in non-principal homes and holiday lets. And the 2 built-in wardrobes in 2 bedrooms will be lost. The stairs with winders will be dark. The top landing will have insufficient headroom and won't comply with building regulations. This could not be more dangerous. Falling downstairs is the greatest single cause of accidental death in the home, around 1,000 people each year in the UK. In the bedrooms to be provided, there isn't the minimum 2.3 headroom in any part. Only a central strip of 700 millimetres has headroom of 1.8 metres. It will be necessary to crawl into bed. Hereafter, I refer to Rother District Council Development and Site Allocations Local Plan. Policy DHG3 states residential internal space standards. The Council adopts the government's nationally described space standard. All new dwellings, including changes of use and houses converted into flats, should provide adequate minimum internal space in line with the standard, applying notably to bedrooms, storage and floor-to-ceiling heights, 2.3 being the minimum. Paragraphs 4.31 and 4.32 also refer. Paragraph 4.36 and figure 2, the government standard also states that a 3-storey dwelling for 8 persons should have an internal floor area of 134 square metres. This application site has gross floor area of just 92 square metres, i.e. only 69% of what it should be. The proposed loft rooms don't have adequate headroom under the standard, so aren't included in the gross floor area. There's not enough ground floor provision for 8 to 10 people. Also, it would result in loss of considerable loft storage necessary in a family house. The addition of these loft bedrooms is clearly overdevelopment and contravenes planning policy DHG3. Paragraph 4.95 states, alterations to roofs to create attic level accommodation require careful design. Some roofs may not be suitable for conversion. It would be contrary to the intent of Rother's planning policy DHG3 not to apply the space standards to conversions. To create significantly substandard accommodation, thus rendering a good house to be fit only for a weekend home or holiday let, is regressive. This proposal is also contrary to Rother's local plan core strategy policy EN3, parts G, architectural quality, and H, sustainable design and construction. The applicant says it won't be a holiday let, but he wants additional bedrooms so his friends and extended family can stay, and they will be on holiday. Holiday makers can be disruptive in residential areas. I disagree with the planning officer report. Extra people will surely have extra vehicles. It will inconvenience neighbours who have young children and use their car for work and everyday living. It will lead to parking on the grass. This will go against paragraph 4.67 of Rother's planning policy, which says, residential development should be capable of accommodating the reasonable expectations of likely occupiers, applying to the external areas and parking in accordance with local plan core strategy policy OSS4. The planning officer's report 8.4.2 concludes, I quote, the applicant is only seeking to provide additional space to create family-sized accommodation, but this house already is family-sized. In conclusion, there have been 17 letters of objection and not one in support. The proposal is contrary to several planning policies. It would create substandard and dangerous accommodation and constitute overdevelopment of a decent family house. There would be an unreasonable adverse impact on immediate and nearby neighbours. I would ask the committee to refuse the application.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for this room? Any questions? No, that was a very articulate presentation. Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay for the presentation. Councillor Norton, first up.
At first sight, this seems to be a fairly inoffensive proposal because it's not altering the frontal view of the property at all. But I think there are, as Hilary Room has suggested, there are some much bigger issues at stake here. If I can just touch on one, which Hilary didn't have time to deal with, and that is the access. The access really is quite dangerous. If you look at the map on page 21, you can see that the roads are very narrow. I myself nearly had a very serious collision coming out of Barrack Square and going round into Mill Road because the entrance to Spring Steps is on the corner almost. Very difficult to see until you're right onto it. Hilary Room mentioned that there were children living in, we don't have many children in Winchelsea for reasons which many of you know, but we do have a couple of families in the Spring Steps and they do play on the little grass square and they bring out their little trolleys and it isn't going to be as safe for them when there are more cars coming and going as there will be. There isn't much parking space in Spring Steps and people at the moment are forced often to try and find parking space in other roads, which is not very satisfactory. Hilary Room has dealt pretty adequately with the objections to what she and I feel is the spoiling of a very nice house at the moment. And it's one of the, it's important in Winchelsea, I think it's important anywhere, it's important in Winchelsea because we have very little cheaper and more affordable housing. And this is the kind of place that a family who weren't rich could afford to buy. And I fear that if this development goes ahead, this is going to be a much less attractive offer for anybody who wants to live permanently in the town. And really the last thing Winchelsea wants is more weekenders and more Airbnb. Becoming a big problem. We already have about a dozen Airbnbs and they are generating a great deal of noise and inconvenience. And I don't think, I only realized recently that I thought B&Bs were places that people went for a week or a fortnight and stayed. But in fact, Airbnbs, people often only stay 1, 2, 3 nights. So there's constant coming and going of people and cars. This is a very quiet little community, about seven householders. It's a cul-de-sac, it's a peaceful part of the town. And I can quite understand why 17 residents have petitioned against it. What we need in Winchelsea is more permanent residents who will contribute to the life of the town. And I very much fear, we haven't any evidence, but I very much fear that this will become, already it is owned by a weekender who doesn't appear very regularly. I fear it's going to become another Airbnb. And that will be very sad for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens, did you want to say anything on this before we progress?
Well, yeah, I agree with what Councillor Norton's just said. Winchelsea is a really quiet little place and it is becoming more and more weekenders and Airbnbs, which is terrible for our, youngsters and people wanting to live in a nice house. Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you.
Councillor Langlands.
Thank you. Marks, can I just get a bit of clarity here? Because I was quite confused after the visit in the sense of what I am actually making a decision on. Now, my understanding is that I'm making a decision on 3 roof lights. Internally, it is building control. So the fact that I don't think the loft is high enough, we don't need to have change of use for the roof, and so on and so forth, doesn't come under our remit. I mean, how much do we need to consider all these other things? Or are we just saying externally, we are looking at whether 3 roof lights in the roof are going to impact on the environment? Do we have, you know, I'm not clear.
You could convert that loft internally and it wouldn't be a planning matter. The only thing is the 3 Velux roof lights. And things like the National Described Space Standards, they apply really to new housing development, not to existing housing development. So actually you are looking at the impact of those Velux windows. You can't anticipate what might happen, what you feel could happen in the future. Therefore, it is quite simple and restricted what you have to look at and what's before you and what you can make a decision on. Now, certainly you can add informatives regards to internal works, building control, and the need to get building regulations approval. And if obviously if they can't and there's a trouble there, then that's a matter for the Building Act.
Councillor Barnes.
That condition is quite important then in terms of the building control. We could
Well,
request-
Condition is an informative.
Informative, not condition, because we can't control that. As I've said, it's only the balance.
No, right, thank you.
Chairman, it seems to me we do have policies about space standards and things like that. We are worried about, I think, making sure there is adequate space within the house for the size of family that's going to occupy it. I do take the point. I don't think we can anticipate whether this is going to be weekend development or Airbnb. Those are things which, unless we have a policy in our local plan, which we don't, and coming from Cornwall, I may actually think that we ought to begin to think about those kind of issues, but they're not really relevant here. I think the parking issue is a genuine one. When I looked at this, these are houses without garages, so the parking will be on the street, and that is bound to affect the neighbours and indeed the whole character of the street. But the thing that really gives me pause, and I hadn't thought of this so much, I looked at the mansard windows and I wondered why they hadn't actually gone for dormer windows, because it seems to me the mansards are pretty unattractive, but I was prepared to tolerate that because it's not overlooked, it's not visible. Therefore, although I would not have done it myself, I didn't think there was any good planning reason against. But I have to say, I'm now brought up against the actual internal impact of this change. And I frankly am not persuaded that we ought to be creating what will approximate to a good deal less than the housing standards that we actually expect now to be built. It's more akin to what's happening with the conversion of offices. And again, where offices are converted, we are going to lay down minimum standards. Frankly, I think this is unacceptable on space grounds.
Miles, would you just respond to that? Yeah.
Thanks very much. I think to go back to paragraph 8 and the appraisal and the main issues raised, its impacts on neighbouring and nearby properties and the effects of the proposal on the visual amenities of the street scene, High Weald, AONB and Winchelsea Conservation Area. It is limited to that. Office to residential conversions, they're creating new units, new self-contained units. It's a change of use. This isn't a change of use. It's not a new unit. It's a loft conversion, and but ultimately, from a planning point of view, it's the 3 Velux windows to the rear elevation, and that is what is before you for determination.
Yes, Councillor Pro-Chair.
Thank you. Well, first of all, can I thank Councillor Norton for getting us on the site visit, because that was really useful. And having read the report, I would have thought no problem here. One point I want to make is that we find ourselves in a very difficult position because we're being asked to make a change, approve a change, which which is going to have a knock-on effect in all sorts of ways, which we haven't got in the report and we're told to ignore. So that's quite a difficulty for us. The other difficulty I have is, again, a point that Councillor Norton mentioned, is that when we did our local neighbourhood plan in Robertsbridge, we wanted to put in a policy of not enlarging smaller properties, particularly in the centre, because it takes away the stock of affordable properties. And unfortunately, we were told we couldn't have that as a policy, which is a shame, because this changing it from 3 to 5, is going to have a change to the environment there. However, we've been told quite clearly we can only look at it through in terms of the windows. Can I just remind people to have a look at 2.2 in the report? The building's not listed, so that's okay. But it is located within the development boundary and conservation area for Winchelsea, the High Weald AONB, and an archaeologically notification area. Winchelsea is covered by 2 Article 4 directions, which restrict certain forms of development. So this is a very precious place in Rother, very precious. And we know that, and thankfully it's nice to go and visit it again to remind ourselves of that. And luckily we were able to see from the back. And as soon as I saw that lovely roof, I thought, no, it shouldn't go in there. Because I think, and Miles, you're going to have to help me here if you wouldn't mind, is that, I don't know, Hilary mentioned several policies, but for me it was, okay, it's not on the front of the house, but we know, don't we, that it doesn't matter where it is, who can see it, who can't see it, it's still important to have the right design. So I think that would affect the character locally, I really do. And I don't know whether it's EN3 or DHG3, but I don't want to support this.
Well, if you're thinking, what are the planning issues and what are the issues that people see might be issues that are not planning issues? You have to be very clear about this. And I say that because should this sort of application be refused and go to appeal, you put in a whole lot of non-planning reasons or weak planning reasons, and you will lose that appeal. And I would say that, we did an analysis about 18 months or 2 years ago on applications, and generally officers got these sort of applications right when tested at appeal, despite how we might feel. I'm not directing you one way or the other. I'm just saying you have to be very careful on this, in that, I'll come to you in a second, John, in that this roof space could be converted and used today, right? It could be being used now, for all you know. We didn't go in there. Somebody could have, done the whole thing out, and it would be there being used. It could be being used as a bedroom. Maybe it wouldn't pass building control, but you have to consider that as a point, and that actually we're dealing with the Velux windows. So it becomes then a question only of whether you like the windows or not about parking, not about all these other issues. I presume highways, I know, but I think it has to be really made clear, because it is very easy to sort of trip over. I think I've got, if I can go to Councillor Harmer first, then come back to you. All right.
Thank you. I echo what you've just said, Councillor Van Hall, because we're talking about something that we don't morally agree with. And if anybody knows about these things planning wise, it's me and my ward. And bringing it right back again, we're talking about 2 Velux windows. And if as Councillor Van Hall said, if it goes to appeal, we might have a little bit of a problem. So unfortunately, I think I might have to support, even though morally I don't think it's a particularly nice build or enough space for a normal family. But parking issues, which are nationwide, are going to affect everyone. But the risk of appeal and this going back again, thank you.
Councillor Barnes.
I'm genuinely wondering, Chairman, whether we oughtn't to defer this for more information. The objector made reference to a number of our policies which appeared to give us some control over the space and height. I'm not sure, they're not in front of me. I can't check whether they're right. I'm being told by you and by our planning development manager that they're not relevant. But we do have in front of us not just 3 Velux windows, we have the purpose in front of us, which is to facilitate conversion to the attic to 2 bedrooms. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for us as a planning committee to consider whether that is adequate space for the purpose. My guess is that for 2 bedrooms, the space is both too small. I have to say I've seen a conversion of another house where in fact you can only stand up in the center of the bedroom. All the way around, you cannot stand up in that bedroom. I frankly do not want to create that kind of bedroom in Rother.
You need to respond.
Well, I mean, I don't think there is something here that we can look into more. I mean, I think I've said it now more than once, what we're limited to look at and consider. So I would say that a decision should be made today on what we have in front of us.
Well, you can, Councillor Langlands.
I just asked them, Miles, if we say yes, and because that clearly, you know, we are just looking at the windows, if we say yes, building control could well say no. And therefore, we're left with, he's got 3 windows, but a roof space that cannot be used as bedrooms.
That is immaterial, I'm afraid.
Yes, but that is the situation that could happen. And so all our surmising today, what I'm trying to say is they have control over that and they can actually decide on looking at the plans that it's not suitable.
Yes, I mean, it's subject to them, it's subject to different legislation.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Prochek.
Just go again, asking your help, Miles, because for me, it really, you're right, we can't consider all these other aspects, which is a pity. But for me, it was actually putting those 3 Veluxes in the middle of that lovely roof. That it was the character and appearance. And yes, it's not on the front, it's on the back, but that's irrelevant when you've got the whole street scene to think about. And so what I want to say is that it's not in character. If it was a single building, fine. But it's not, it's that row, with that lovely roof. And they are lovely houses.
Well, we're at a point. There are 3 suggestions being put on the table here from what I can see, ranging from deferment to refusal. So I think we're at a point where somebody could put forward a recommendation to vote on. You'd like
I'll second it.
Yeah, so we have a proposer and a seconder refusal, but could we have a reason for that refusal, please? Okay, all right, so that is the proposal.
And the ignoring of the space specifications, which is, as a council, we are meant to take into account, aren't we? If we're given these minimum sizes, are we to ignore that?
Reasonable.
This is, yeah,
On the
it's
character.
cramped.
Well, do you feel the second reason is that?
Personally, I don't. But
Okay, so the sort of direction is the second reason is unlikely to be successful because it's a building control matter. But if you want to leave it in there, you know, you're entitled to do that. Yeah. So would you like to make a decision between you? Really?
Yes,
Councillor Prochek,
I was seconding Councillor Prochek's motion that we should reject it.
and she has put forward that it's based on the impact of the character of the row of terraces. Do you want to just?
No, I would want to add to that the nature, the spoiling of an attractive and adequate house by it's going to be cramped and I think even dangerous conditions upstairs.
All right, this is a building control issue, not one will be judged generally. This is the advice being given. Just have to be a little careful on this one, because you can, if something went to appeal, you can undermine your case by putting in reasons that are potentially unreasonable. It's best to focus on the thing that you've got your main chance on, really. But happy to put it in. I mean, I'm not stopping anyone doing anything. I'm just trying to sort of communicate the advice being given. Councillor Barnes, did you want to make a point there?
I'm puzzled, Chairman. We're separating out building control, but these are planning policies which have laid down space standards. Are we to neglect them altogether? Why do we have them in those policies?
I think we need to clarify. I would agree.
Yeah, the space standards seem to relate to, development which affects the appearance. Whether you're looking at national space standards, these are new dwellings. If it's other things, it's to do with extending the actual space. Alterations to a roof in planning terms actually are you maintaining a roof line? We are maintaining a roof line. We've only got to consider the Velux roof lines. So I don't think the space standards apply to this, and the officer clearly, when writing their report, didn't agree with this if you look at what the issues are in that report.
Chairman, we're told what the purpose is in the proposal.
Look, you're absolutely within your right to put that in as a reason for refusal. Whether it becomes a substantive one, should it go to appeal, is
Can I just say a bit more about my echoing really what Councillor Prochak had to say about design? We're in a conservation area. These were a row of houses designed, actually well designed.
Well, I think we've got the idea on the character.
Yeah, no, but I think it's quite important we spell out that these were well designed by whoever the architect was for Battle Royal District Council. They were designed as a whole. Maintaining the roof line is not the only thing. Effectively, you alter the character of the road.
I think Councillor Prochak's made that point really clearly in her reasons.
We need to spell it out because there will be an appeal here, I'm sure.
The officers can expand on that, but I think the reason for refusal is a planning reason for refusal, and that's what is required. Councillor Langlands.
I think I would really, really be struggling with these reasons. And I think we are going to, if we do refuse this, I think we are going to put ourselves in a position where we would probably lose on the basis that Miles quite clearly informs me that I'm looking at three roofs. I realise they're at the rear of the building. I personally think that it's something that will be quite weak, and I think we might well lose an appeal on this, and I would be very concerned.
Thank you. Councillor Tracy.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to say, unfortunately, the residential internal spaces DHG1 quite clearly says it's all new dwellings, including changes of use, which this isn't. It's not a new dwelling, and it's not a house being converted into flats, although people might suspect otherwise. It doesn't apply, so we can't object to it. I dislike this intensely, but it's just three windows.
Right. So we've got. Thank you. Really, that's really good, and thank you for your quick reference to the core strategy. I notice others aren't bringing theirs along. Bring them along, because you can open the page up. You have Councillor Prochak. Did you want to say something more?
I just wondered if in the report we could reflect our concerns and not put it as a reason for refusal, but actually reflect somehow these concerns that we have.
You could have that as an informative regarding potential changes of
So
use.
I would support that. And the other thing is to strengthen. I mean, we do have policies, and whether you can see things or not, they're important. Is it DHG3? I don't know which one it is, Miles. Can you help us with that one? I haven't got my
course. I can't off the top of my head, sorry. No.
I think it's DHG3.
Yeah, he hasn't had time to memorise all the policies in a week and a half. Okay, no, I think we're at a point. So the reason for refusal is affecting the character and appearance of the row of terraces with an informative, which just reflects the committee's feeling that the space in the roof would be too small. Okay, is that you? Everyone happy with that? So we're going to. So the motion is for refusal. So if you put your hand up to support that, you're supporting refusal. So can we take a vote on that? Those supporting that, yeah. Those against that. And do we have any deferrals on that? Any not deferrals, any abstentions? And so that's carried. Right, thank you very much. So few people here today, it's sort of hard to. Good, all right, thank you. That took a lot longer than I would have expected. Okay, so number 10 has been deferred till December. We have seen that property once. We will probably see it again from the inside windows, and it's just been a little bit of time sorting that out with the applicant, which takes us on to the appeals. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments on the appeals list. Unfortunately, you will notice there are a few non-determinations coming up. Does anyone have any questions or comments they want to make on the appeals list? No? Anyone? No questions? Okay, so the last item is just to note the date for the next site inspections, which is 9th of November, and on that basis, at 10:20 we can complete the meeting. Thank you very much, and we'll finish the live streaming. Thank you.